Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Yes, welcome to Retro Anatomy of a Movie, when we take a film that we sometimes inexplicably have never seen, watch it for the first time, and tell you what we think. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by Alexa Goodman.
Yeah, that would be me.
I just combined two people's names. That's Rachel Goodman. I was going to say, Alexa's not here, I'm joined by Rachel Goodman, but instead I jumped to the... See, it's all in your head.
I thought you did it on purpose.
No,
I was just rolling with it.
It makes life easier if I have it written out on a teleprompter. So this is Rachel Goodman.
I would be Rachel.
Alexa Capiello on assignment. She got sent down to the minors. She needs to go back to training camp for a little while. Other sports metaphors that you can employ if you like.
And today she's also going by Rachel. So
she's also, she's Rachel Capiello. It's sort of weird.
It worked out.
Wow, we should really just do Freaky Friday. I'm going to bet we've all seen Freaky Friday. Although, maybe not the... I'm going to bet you've seen the original Freaky Friday.
Yeah,
so,
and the new one.
You know what? I have seen the new one.
I liked it, but, it's another conversation.
Jodie Foster's not in it, and Lindsay Lohan is.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about Brian's Song today, and why we're talking about Brian's Song. One, because we had never seen it, and I also chose this. I thought it was a good one because we do have a big sports movie opening this week, The Way Back, with Ben Affleck, Brian in the booth. Jeez,
it is switching.
Just gonna call everybody.
Is everything all right?
But to be fair, your name is Ryan.
That's right.
Let's get Ryan's song from the booth. Ryan, just a quick minute. You've seen the movie Way Back, and what did you think?
That's correct. I have seen The Way Back. As far as I know, the embargo isn't up yet, so there's just, I think, social media reactions, so I can't say much. However, I will say that if you're a sports fan, Ben Affleck fan, this is the film for you, and just all happiness from me.
Hey, you're very happy.
All positive
right now.
vibes from me with this film.
That's all we need. We need the good vibes. So that was why I thought this was a great one. And this is one of those movies that I had heard of forever. And you often hear it referred to as one of these great sports films. You also hear of it in terms of it's one of the few movies that'll make men cry. And I want to ask you first, Rachel, what was your familiarity with Brian's Song before, one, I suggested it, and then you watched it?
I knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
I recognized the title. It sounded familiar. I had never knew who was in it, never knew what it was about. Going into this, I watched this with hubby Joe, and he had seen it, but I specifically asked him not to tell me the premise, not to tell me...
Watch this is what's going to happen right here.
Outside of seeing that it was James Caan and Billy D, I knew nothing about this. I just went in, and the instant I played it and started hearing, I was like, okay, something terrible is going to happen. This music is way too sad. But Joe did, Joe, watching it with me, did say that, he had absolutely loved the movie when it came out for television.
Right. And that was the first thing that I didn't realize, is that it was a television movie. And the way people talked about it, I never for even a moment assumed it was a television movie, because especially from an earlier era, television movies are exceedingly low quality. I remember television movies in the 80s, and this is from 1971.
Yeah.
But I think especially for a TV movie, the production value is actually very high in this movie. There are one or two moments that we'll highlight where it was like, ouch, this is a TV movie.
The only moments I noticed that personally is when they had some of those close-up, like, oh my God, shots of this is tragic.
Yeah.
And they panned in on, it was the two times they panned in on the actresses who played the wives. And they just literally, it was like this very melodramatic moment that did not play it didn't play seriously because of how over the top it was. Outside of that, I have no complaints.
Yeah, I think there were a few of those, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I was excited to the idea. It's like, all right, I'm gonna get Lando Calrissian and Sonny Corleone in a movie. Yeah. Great, I'm ready for this. And it did not disappoint. I mean, other than it's like 74-minute running time, but again, it was a TV movie. But I was immediately caught up in the story, and look, it seems very familiar, but it throws you off because it's not really about what you think it's about initially. You know, it's like, all right, well, you're going to be the first white player to be a roommate of a black player, and they talk about those things, but that's not what the movie was about. And I was expecting a lot more of that in this.
They also stressed, you know, I think it took place in the 60s.
1965. Yeah. Well, that's when it starts.
Yeah, and then this is also based off a real person too.
Correct.
So
well, they're both real people.
Yeah. But Brian's story is a real, true story.
Yeah.
And the thing that really, when I saw this happening, the coach stressed, you know, if a white man and a black man are going to room together, you have to be aware that we're going to go to places in the southern states that they are not going to be receptive to this. Are you okay with this? And he asked both of them.
Yeah.
And so my thought was, this is what this is going to be about.
Exactly
Even though
what I thought it
it's
was gonna
Brian's song and it was, you know, named after the white guy, I was like, okay, no, this is going to really be about this friendship. And that was the only thing I saw online, was it was about a friendship between two men who they grew so close. So my thought was, that's exactly what this was going to be.
I thought that they were going to go through a lot of it, you know, just sort of signs of Jackie Robinson. I think that was very well detailed in the film 42 with Chadwick Boseman as Jackie Robinson. So I did think it was going to, at least, I did actually know a little bit about the fact that Brian Piccolo died of cancer.
Yeah, I did not know that.
What didn't dawn on me is that he was only 26 when it happened, you know, which they mentioned at the end of the film. So I really thought that it's like, oh, we're going to get to that, but we're going to tell this story. But they really don't deal with it. But what we are told at the very beginning is that Ernest Hemingway says every true story ends in death. Well, this is a true story, which I thought was a nice bit of narration.
I did not know about the cancer.
Yeah.
So when I read the quote, I thought, okay, this is these two men who are friends in a time when they could not be friends, and somebody dies because of it.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Well,
was
you
going
definitely got misled.
I was completely misled. This was not that story, and I almost am more appreciative of the fact that we did not get that story, because this was a time when, you know, this is still, the movie was made in what,
1971. Yeah.
71. So this is still a time when we needed to hear a story more like this, where instead of saying, you know, oh, there were problems, just showing what it's like for two people to be friends in a normal situation.
Yeah.
And that it's okay.
And I think that the racial element is certainly there. There's a scene where in voiceover, Brian is reading a letter that he got. They're sort of joking around. They joke around a lot about race in a way that, were you to make this movie in 2020, you certainly wouldn't. You have Brian making Gale Sayers, that's Billy D. Williams' character, laugh hysterically when he tries to be racist, which I think is really effective, but you still have him using the N-word.
And her reaction was hilarious.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I have to say that in my personal life, I think that this is still a realistic conversation that people have.
Yes.
We just don't see it in the media.
You would not put it in the media today. I do think that if, you know, especially, you know, football players who are that close together, you know, they bond really closely. I'm sure they joke about race like that, and you know, nobody's running to the media. Can you believe what he said to me? You know, and I mean, you know, he has jokes. We're thinking of naming our kid after you. You know, and with a different racial epithet, one you don't hear nearly as often.
Yeah.
So I just, you know, they sort of work up to it, and I don't know. It's in no way it's heavy-handed. I think it is somewhat realistic. You know, just in the way that it's portrayed. It just, you certainly wouldn't see it today.
No, yeah, especially not in film.
Yeah.
Real life, I do think, like, even outside of the sports world, it happens, and that's just how people joke around, and it's I just, that was the beauty of watching this, though, was that they were able to discuss things openly, and they weren't just hiding behind, they didn't have to like walk on eggshells around each other. They actually were being super candid and joking and showing all this love, and the way that they each took care of each other. And this movie, they could have chosen to show the struggle between a husband and his wife and what she had gone through watching him with his illness. But instead, they chose to focus on these two men. And I thought that made it even stronger, because that's something that you don't usually see. Right.
And I think a big reason for that is that the film is based on a book that was co-written by Gale Sayers, which it says at the end. So I think it's his story, but I do think it's still a fairly unique perspective. You don't usually get the story about the players. And I think, when they're not hitting it off at the beginning, you're like, can't wait till they're best friends. That's going to happen soon, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like when they're just really, he's like putting the mashed potatoes on the seat and all that. So I think that they did a great job.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And it's, and it's so funny that, James Caan just, that accent that he's doing is so unlike anything I've ever seen him do before. And I was going to just reference in terms of James Caan, the racial stuff is nowhere near as jarring as seeing James Caan in a towel. And I would like to never see anything where he has his shirt off again. And this is him young and in his prime. And I was still like, I think I need to look. I can't believe they showed this on television. There would have been children in the room having to look at James Caan with his shirt off.
Hey, I'm sure there were some people out there who weren't complaining.
Oh no, I'm sure. Look, it's a different time, but I was just like, just take a lint roller to that thing. But anyway, so I think that there's a lot. I think that except for sort of one of the things you're referencing, some of the melodramatic moments. I also think some of the on the field stuff didn't look great, but I think the majority of it, I was really impressed in 1971, the way that they incorporated actual game footage. Yes, it clearly looks different, but the way that they incorporated it with, them sitting on the sidelines and all that, I thought that, again, for the time that this film was made, I don't know. I thought that they did a great job.
The way that they were able to weave the dialogue with the background with the foreground footage, actually, with the dialogue as the background element, I appreciated that because sometimes if they wanted to kind of just move the story along and tell you what was happening on the screen with the play, they did it using character by showing us the Billy and Gail characters actually discussing certain things about what was going on. I thought that was a really very unique way of moving a story forward and showing us without actually telling us. So I liked moments like that. Plus we were seeing the two them actually develop their friendship more. And just those little moments, did it feel dated when we saw some of the sports footage? Yes, of course it did. But I actually think that what bugged me the most in terms of realism was the way they portrayed his cancer at the end.
Yeah.
Because that is, and here's my thing is that I read up on it because I wanted to see how quickly he actually passed, and the way that they presented it in the movie, it felt very rushed, especially with the real story. And I understand this is 71, but just the way that James Caan acted, it was very good acting. Like, don't get me wrong, like I believed he was a sick man. He did not. The cancer is something that I have a lot of history of with my family, and so when I see cancer presented like this, I'm like, no, this didn't feel real.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I didn't think there was anything wrong with his acting. I believed he was sick. Just
what he was called upon, was the way that he was, I guess, so weak after the surgery.
Yeah.
I did think that when it's a little bit earlier before he has the second surgery, when he's talking to his wife and he's like, so I'm trying to think about how I can come back as a kicker. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to have to run so much. And he realistically is like, whoa, what's the problem? And I think that whether that's a real conversation that the real Brian Piccolo had or not, that felt like a very authentic moment. He's like, oh, I'm going to be fine. Like, why are you so upset? I don't get it.
Yeah, that definitely did feel.
Yeah. So I think that we get a lot of there's a lot of emotions with it, and it's really just primarily these characters. We do have a great performance by Jack Warden as Coach Hollis. Jack Warden, this is what I was looking for distractedly. I believe he won an Emmy for it. Let me make sure I'm right. Yeah, Jack Warden won an Emmy for Outstanding Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role. Both James Caan and Billy Dee Williams were nominated for Emmys. And again, we don't usually talk about Emmys on this show, but because it was a TV movie, they were nominated and did not win. But it won for cinematography, and outstanding single program, drama or comedy, achievement, writing, sound editing. It won a DGA award, a Producer Guild's award, And I don't know if it's as prestigious, but it also won a TV Land Award for Blockbuster Movie of the Week. I think that might be a little bit more recent than 1971, since TV Land hasn't been around that long. But I mean, look, it's a highly decorated film.
It says 2006.
And
yeah.
there was a remake in 2001. They did a TV movie for this was an ABC Movie of the Week. They did one for ABC's Wonderful World of Disney with Mekhi Phifer as Sayers and Sean Mayer as Brian Piccolo. So I don't quite know why I would ever watch that unless somebody watches it and tells me it was amazing. I feel like you're doing great just to watch this version of it. But
I mean, just from Googling it really fast, as you mentioned it, the cinematography looks like it's advanced, but I mean, it is 2001 compared to 1971, so that does make sense. But I don't know. James Caan's one of my favorite actors, so I don't. And Billy D. Star Wars is absolutely one of probably my favorite thing of all time ever. Ryan can back me up. He feels the same way. But so seeing Billy D in a movie, in anything, I don't know that I'd be able to see anyone else as Gale.
Ryan, would you watch this movie just because Lando's in it?
Definitely. I mean, two really awesome lead actors that you don't typically get, especially back then for TV movies. So that's the first thing that really surprises me, because I feel like today, it's interchangeable. You could have Matthew McConaughey in a whole season of True Detective, and then you can have him winning an Oscar the next year. But this seems like a really rare instance where it was kind of before they both had their biggest roles.
Yes, absolutely. They were definitely both on the way up. And it's funny because Billy D looks so young, and it has a lot to do with the fact that he has no mustache. And I know he doesn't only have a mustache as Lando, but
here's the thing with Billy D. To me, when I see him in A New Hope, when I see him in Empire, not A New Hope.
Yeah.
I misspoke. When I see him in Empire, he looks the same age as when I just saw him in Tross. But when I see him in Brian's Song, he looks way younger.
He's so young. Yeah. No. I definitely agree with that. And back to what you were saying about cancer, I do feel like it's something that probably didn't get talked about a lot in 1971. It probably especially didn't get portrayed on television. So even though you were disappointed in the portrayal, I wonder if at the time people at least appreciate it. It's like, look, at least we're talking about it. And I mean, I don't think that this really changed anything. I don't think that people started being that much more comfortable talking about it, like in 1972.
The only thing I know is, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Jackie Kennedy have cancer too? And so that got people talking. I have to double check.
Did she have cancer by 1971?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know when. But
that's a great point. But
let's find out. She did have cancer. Probably not. Yeah, I don't think it was.
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay, cool. So, but in any case, I know that when she got cancer, a lot more people were talking about it because that was an image in the media. But in 71, I still feel like it's an excellent point that they brought it up at all, that we were at least kind of starting to talk about it from the publicity of seeing it. But I can't let go of the fact that it didn't
seem authentic.
It wasn't like it was that awful. It wasn't like I believed that he was sick. I believed it could be that quick that someone could go. This is 71.
Real quick. So she was diagnosed in 93.
Oh, okay.
So I thought it was more recent, but I didn't realize it was quite that recent.
No, I didn't realize that either. I thought it was like 80s.
And she only began treatment in 94.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
So there you go. But again, that's that much longer until people were talking about it. And I know we're jumping around a little bit. I meant to mention earlier, the film was such a success on television. They did actually release it theatrically. So it still fits for this show. It was not particularly successful, but I don't know. I mean, at a time where if you missed something on television, or if you saw something and wanted to watch it again, you can't watch it again. So why not put it out in the movie theater? And then you're like, oh, I really like that Brian song. Yeah, I'll go see it in the movie theater.
That was the other thing I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about, made for TV movies. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing that is way different than now. if something was coming out on TV, everybody there were only so many channels.
You had 3 networks and then a couple of other,
yeah,
like over-the-air local channels.
And certain things, certain movies, certain, specials that came out, everybody was talking about. So I feel like this is a very much different time in the sense that, now, like 2001's Brian's song, I didn't know that had come out, and that would have been an age where I would have been watching television. So
you may have watched The Wonderful World of Disney other weeks, but not that week.
Yeah, exactly.
That wasn't one that got you.
Yeah, but the whole thing is that everyone was probably watching this, is my point, and that it did, for that reason, like when I watch something like this, it means more to me because I know, okay, this was probably something that everyone sat down and watched with their family together.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that was the case. In 2005, Entertainment Weekly ranked Brian's song number 7 on its list of top guy cry films. I'm gonna have to look at what the first 6 were. Maybe ones that make you cry that much more. And so then I ask you the question, Rachel. Did you or Hubby Joe get emotional watching especially the final, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes of this movie?
So I apologize to Hubby Joe for confessing this on his behalf.
He's not in the chat anyway.
He's not in the chat. I'll tell him later to watch this. But yeah, he was definitely crying. Yeah, I sniffled.
I paused the movie because my wife came in the room, and I'm like, I'm okay right now. And I didn't look. I'll be honest. I cried a lot more in Avengers Endgame, but
true story.
That was very. I cried 5 distinct times, I think, in Avengers Endgame, which I've talked about on Marvel Movie News Thursdays at 1 Pacific here on the Popcorn Talk. And but there's just a couple of times where I'm just like, well, you can't help it. From Gale giving his bad speech in the locker room, and then them visiting with him, and just when you start to realize like, oh yeah, it's not really going well. And this is an age where, it's not that common for men to tell each other that they love them now in 2020. But especially, what is that, 50 years ago?
And in the sports realm, too? No way.
No, yeah, exactly. Like maybe if your coach dies, you're all like, yeah, we loved him as a coach.
Yeah.
But this is like, I loved him as a friend, or present tense because he was still alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it was very hard not to be moved by it, which again brings it all back around. It's so impressive that this was a television movie, because. I don't know. I can't even think of TV movies that I saw, that were particularly good. I remember I've seen some that aren't. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about when, because now like HBO makes a movie, you can put in theaters a lot of time.
I mean, everything I saw in the 90s, all those like made for TV movies, I would not say they were good. So I can't, like, they would not.
You don't think the Saved by the Bell honeymoon in Hawaii was a particularly great movie?
Oh, that stands up right next to Brian's song.
Yeah, if we were to do this show on that, when we asked, does it hold up? Of course, Saved by the Bell honeymoon in Hawaii or whatever it's called would be. So one of the things we have highlighted is a few of the moments that didn't work. There's one moment that was so bad, I was like, you couldn't have cut that out. And
which moment was that?
I'll tell you.
I'm
it's
waiting.
When Gail and Mrs. Piccolo, Joy Piccolo, they go downstairs at the hospital to go find the little girl because she wanted an autograph. And and it should have been like a moving moment, but it's like the acting from the nurse was so bad and so like. So was she the only one who read for the part? Because it's just like she's not with us, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be something. Yeah, she died.
Like, she didn't have any emotion behind it either.
Can you give us that again? Can you give us that line reading again? Yeah, she died. I'm like, okay, so that was the only take they got of it. They couldn't fix it with some ADR. Maybe the script supervisor, just says it in post. It was just like, it's the one time. And I know there were a couple of, there were some weird camera movements that felt like television. There was a little bit of some heavy-handed acting, but nothing took me out of the movie except for that. I'm like, ugh. ugh, I hate everything about this moment right now.
To me, it wasn't so much that it was bad acting. It was the fact that the nurse showed no empathy behind it at all.
Because she wasn't a good actor.
Yeah. Well, or the nurse was just a really bad person.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. No, because the nurse had the sense. She had the sense to shoo away the child.
Yeah. But she just, I think, you know what bothered me even more though, beyond the deliverance of that line, was the fact that, you know, Brian's wife went down and didn't seem to recognize what the nurse was trying to tell her before she said it. I think that Brian's wife should have figured it out.
She's not with us. Well, great. Let's get her address and we'll send it to her. No, I don't think you're listening to me. No, it's fine. My husband really wants it.
She kept pushing. I'm like, nope. You should. Yeah, and I think that moment would have played out with better with no dialogue. Like maybe she walks up trying, you know, to give
they just
the
turn
autograph.
up the score really loud, and then she makes a face, and then they both look sad. I mean, that would have
been fine.
Yeah.
Or even his wife saying, "Hey, here it is," and then the nurse just giving a really sad look. I think we would get it.
Yeah. So we'll call out either Doreen Lang or Jennifer Kulik. Now Jennifer Kulik, that's the same last name as Buzz Kulik, the director. So I'm gonna take that as Jennifer Kulik is nurse number 2 because she's a relative of the director and he couldn't cut her out.
Yeah.
Or
it would have been a divorce.
Or, you know, maybe it's your niece or, you know what I mean? Like, either way, it's like, it's not worth it. I'm going to leave. You know, people are only going to see this one time when it airs, so nobody will even remember how bad it is. There's no way 50 years from now somebody will be talking about what a bad performance this was.
Amazon? What's Amazon?
Yeah, and, you know, there's you do get some cameos from actual Chicago Bears of the era because, you know, it was only made a few years after the story actually happened. But again, you know, there's not a lot of actors that you might recognize, but Bernie Casey is one of the actors that I think a lot of people would recognize from a lot of things. But yeah, it's got 2 actors who are huge now.
Yeah.
Obviously, James Caan and Billy D. Williams were not known at the time, but I thought that it was interesting that it was really just them and of course Jack Warden, but Bernie Casey known for films such as Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Revenge of the Nerds, and Never Say Never Again, a James Bond film I referenced mere moments ago, the extra one with Sean Connery after he had retired, and I believe it came out the same year as View to a Kill because it's like weird different studio rights and it's a whole thing.
He came back I think in 1968 for that.
Oh, well, no, Never Say Never Again is 1983. This is like the old James Bond. It's the same plot as Thunderball, 1983. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's tease it forward though. That's a conversation we'll have in the beginning of April. We will be doing a James Bond themed episode. What are some other thoughts you had as you watched this movie? I want to make sure that we fully explore our thoughts on this before we answer our big question.
A movie like this makes me want to go out and read the book. That's actually next on my list of reads after feeling how powerful this was on screen. And this wasn't even a long movie. It was like an hour and 15.
Hour 15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, it really it really sat with me. And I want to go learn more about this person. And that was the whole point.
Yeah.
And, so I just want to see how this affected people too, because I feel like this might have been one of the tragic deaths of the sports world in that era.
Right. And the book is called I Am Third. The screenplay was written by William Blinn, who also he won an Emmy for writing Roots. He wrote Fame, and those are I guess the big ones. But it is again based on the book by Gail Sayers. All right. So when we talk about these films on this show, we always ask the question, does it hold up? So I have to ask you the question, Rachel. Does Brian's Song hold up almost 50 years later?
Absolutely. Outside of this taking place in the 60s, I would see this in a theater today. Absolutely.
I mean, especially with Billy D. Williams and James Caan.
Yeah, but especially with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, there's some TV moments. I kind of forgot that there was a moment where I could see the shadow of the boom when the coach goes to talk to the both of them.
We paused and looked because it was definitely a shadow. Yeah.
So again, that's one that I forgot. But it's little stuff like that. But that you can't throw out the whole movie because of that. Although I guess there are movies where I would. But no, I think this definitely holds up. I think this is a great movie. And the testament to it is the fact that you can, overlook a couple of moments. I mean, sometimes if a movie's on the fringe and it has 3 awkward moments, you're like, well, I thought I liked it, but now I don't. So, No, I think and I think it's just because this is such a compelling real life story, and it just it has all the elements. And again, it's about just the friendship between 2 men. And the fact that they grow to just care about each other so much. And I think it's something that we don't see every day. So
absolutely.
I'm inclined to agree. You have something else?
I have something else. Earlier, this is like completely off topic.
Well, that's what we do here.
Just to like fact check us here, the last Sean Connery James Bond movie was 1971, Diamonds Are Forever.
Right, but he comes back and does Never Say Never Again. So that's the Never Say Never Again is this extra James Bond movie where he's old. So Diamonds Are Forever is after the lone George Lazenby movie. And so then he comes back because they're like, oh, that didn't work. Let's go ahead and get him again. But Never Say Never Again it's a weird rights issue because they had to adapt the screenplay for Thunderball. I am not an expert on this, but we can certainly talk about this when we do talk about
James Bond.
Yeah, but it is definitely a 1983 film starring Sean Connery, directed by Irving Kershner. So, but it's based on Thunderball, and that had previously been adapted in 1965. And for some reason, the rights with Thunderball were different. That studio could make an adaptation of Thunderball today for some reason if they chose to. Sean Connery doesn't work so much. But anyway, now that we've tidied all that up, the more you know. Thank you. So in any case, I think that's all the time we have, Rachel. We'll be back next week with a big movie we haven't seen before. You can find out. We'll tweet about it. And where can people keep in touch with us?
You could find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman or on Instagram at Rachel Radner Author.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And if you're at all politically minded, later on tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, over on AfterBuzz TV, we'll be doing a special Super Tuesday edition of the Trump Report. So please tune into that. Otherwise, we will see you next Tuesday at 3 Pacific, that's 6 Eastern, right here. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.